Welcome back. You're in a different place with me this time. You're standing in my office, or I'm standing in my office here in Dallas. You can see Chuck Norris has joined us today. So let's jump right in. We're going to cover two different statistics or types of data today that we haven't discussed yet in the past couple months. We're going to discuss foreclosures. We'll do that second. And first, we want to talk about something very specific. Now, we'll continue covering different things because 2020 is a wild year. And if we just study the same numbers over and over again, I think we're missing some of the context that other details might tell us. Let's talk opportunity zones. In 2017, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, I believe that's what it's called, established a bunch of opportunity zones across the nation. And these are segments of the market that they've identified for investment. They've incentivized investment from businesses and homeowners and otherwise. They want developers to come in and improve these areas. They believe that they could be rich urban centers or proper suburbs. Regardless of what type of neighborhood it is, they've identified that they want to improve the quality of it. If they need improvement, then naturally they would underperform the market. The story here that you would hear from others is that opportunity zones are underperforming the market. That's kind of the nature of them. And yet, specifically what we're looking at is the fact that they're not gaining the same type of appreciation this year that the rest of the market is. Now, appreciation, we would talk about average sales price. We're talking instead about median sale price. This is going to tell you a little bit different. This is affected by the value of the homes and whether they're trending up or down. This is also about what type of home might be selling. In the case of the luxury market, has been on fire. Luxury market is doing very, very well right now. Homes, valued at the top 10% of the market. And so when you see $1 million home that is more likely to sell right now this year than it was last year, that's great. And that's going to move the median sale price up, especially right now, because if people are hunkering down and staying in place, this is the story that we've been talking about, right? There aren't enough sellers on the market for this overabundance of buyers that are here with cheap money and the desire to make a move up. Naturally, if the type of home they're purchasing is more expensive, then the median sale price would move with it. You can see nationally on the screen here, the median sale price for the month of October, $325,000. The median sale price in the South specifically, $288,000. This is not a new idea. The South generally has a lower median sale price. Again, it's not because our homes are worth less. That is the case in much of the South. It's also the type of home that you might purchase. When you go to Malibu, you're going to find multi-million-dollar properties right on the beach, right? You're probably not going to find that in Bedford, Texas. You might, although there's no beach, so it'd be very difficult. Anyhow, with finite land up against the coast, values are generally higher. That pulls the national median sale price up. In the South, we have fewer of those factors. And more vacant land still to build on, which is very important because you've had big farming cultures in the South historically. You have a lot of land that you can still develop into single family. Moving on. So percentage of opportunity zones under the market median sale price. This is of all opportunity zones across the nation. 89% of opportunity zones have a median sale price that is lower than the national median sale price for all general markets. Again, we would expect this because if we're looking for areas of development, then these opportunity zones would naturally have lower prices, right? You've got 11% that has a higher median sale price, and I would say that's likely in places that have higher land values naturally. If we're looking at the entire national picture, then something in Seattle, Washington, identified as an opportunity zone is not going to compare against something in Birmingham, Alabama that's also identified as an opportunity zone. You've got big disproportionate swings in sale prices. The next number is pretty stark though. 29% of all opportunity zones have a median sale price that is less than half of their local market. Less than half of their local market. So if your local market median sale price is 500, that means that 29% of them are valued at $250,000 or less. That's big. That tells us a lot. So nearly a third of them. Now, over a third, well, let's pause for a moment right there and talk about why that's important. Opportunity zones, because of the type of property that is naturally there and the demographics that generally would invest in them, they're not performing at the same rate. Let's talk about homeowners. Let's talk about current homeowners. We have people that have lost their jobs, very, very, very high unemployment rates in certain parts of the country. Not everybody is impacted. There are certain segments of the economy that are doing phenomenally well. Those people are moving up, and the folks that may be lower income earners, or perhaps they belong to a sector of the job market that has been hit. They're fortunate to have their job still, but maybe they're hunkering down. They're not making big moves right now. There are lots of people acting very, very conservatively in the economy currently. Well, if that's the case, their home never comes up for sale, which means that nobody can purchase it, which doesn't allow the market to increase the way it naturally would. First-time home buyers, another really good example. You got people that want to get into the market. A large segment of that of lower income earners who would be first-time home buyers are not in the game right now. This market is not being driven by that segment of the economy that we would normally see when rates are very low. Right now, a lot of them are sitting on the sidelines, either because they just can't, or because they choose to, because and you've heard me say this for months, there's a lot of fear right now. Much of it is justified, and much fear is unwarranted. And I say that it's unwarranted not out of a place of lack of compassion, and yet it's a place of understanding that there are solutions to a lot of the desires that people have for spending or investing, and those that would provide those solutions aren't providing them loudly enough or quickly enough. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I will say this: these opportunity zones are missing a lot of the typical people that would be making moves. Why is that? So, nationally, 36% of all opportunity zones are less than $150,000. In the South, that is an even greater number. Nearly half of all the opportunity zones in the South have a median sale price under $150,000. These are typically more rural areas, or where opportunity zones are mostly is closer to major population centers. If you have, you can see under $150,000, that's less than that's less than half of the national average. That is a very, very big difference. So again, we're not talking about typical home buyer. We're talking about a very specific segment of the market. Guys, these people are suffering right now. These numbers represent some homelessness, which is tragic. They also represent some opportunities that people will have coming out of this. We're going to next look at foreclosures, and this is part of the same story, because if these trends continue, or if the trend reverses, whatever happens to the real estate market, whether we have a foreclosure crisis, or if it revives and becomes very healthy and people start investing in more traditional ways again in the market, we're going to see an outsized opportunity in these opportunity zones. So if appreciation continues to rise in the rest of the market, you'll have investors that have kind of purchased themselves out, or the market has surpassed where it makes sense for them to enter into the market in the traditional investment opportunities. You have major investment opportunities in these lower price points under $150,000. So those of you watching who are considering investments, there's big opportunities, because again, vacant houses do nobody any good. And this next thing that we're going to look at is a pending foreclosure crisis in some locations in the country. Let's talk about this first of all. So 11,673 foreclosures in October. These are foreclosures. This number is tracked really toward the end. This is either something that is being put up for auction, or a bank is repossessing it. These are kind of the end of the foreclosure process. It was a 20% increase from last month. It is also a 79% decrease from last year, October. What this tells us, foreclosures are way down. We would expect them to be basically nothing because there's a foreclosure moratorium. Banks cannot repossess homes right now, aside from very specific instances. There are instances in which they filed previous to the pandemic, and they just kept on with that same process. There are also situations in which a homeowner has just completely walked away. They're vacant properties. Nobody's living there. Well, a bank is going to continue with foreclosure processes there as well. So much of this could not, well, let me say that differently. These foreclosures are represented by most of them were started before foreclosure moratorium went into place. Here's the problem, though. With an employment crisis and unemployment being very high, you've got a bunch of people that never made good on their payments. Many people that begin the foreclosure process end up pulling themselves out of it. Either they initiate the short sale process and they get out from under the house, come to an agreement with the bank that's going to save everybody some money, or they make good on their payments, which is really the preferable method, right? Well, we have people that were behind. We hit a pandemic. A bunch of people lost their jobs. Kind of makes sense that they didn't keep paying their mortgages. What we'll talk about next month, I really want to get into deep, is talking about the deferred payments, essentially, that people have put out. There's a lot of misunderstandings around what it means to not pay your mortgage for a month. It's not a free month of mortgage at all. It's stacking. It's stacking either at the end of the mortgage or it's all coming due at the same time a couple months later after not having to pay it. It is wreaking havoc in some segments of the market. Let's talk about foreclosures again, though, specifically. One out of every roughly 12,000 homes nationally are under foreclosure. That is a very small number, historically speaking. I mean, it's tragic anytime somebody loses their home to foreclosure, but put in perspective historically, this is a very, very small number. What is a very high number is 1 out of every 1,900 homes. And that's what's happening right now in Beaumont, Texas. Beaumont and the larger Houston metro was hit terribly by the pandemic, and they came up with some very drastic measures to stop the spread of the virus. And it has wreaked havoc in all segments of the economy in Houston, saving just a few. And very tragically, the housing market, which nationwide has been very healthy, is in a very, very bad place in the Houston area. I'm not saying that it can't recover, and yet it is important to say that there are people suffering right now, big time. There are people that are on the verge of, or are homeless, right? If you take somebody's home, where are they going to live? But perhaps with somebody else. The employment crisis is a part of this. Local regulations are part of this. And guys, something that you can't track through statistics, and something I believe is the biggest factor, is the amount of fear that people are harboring in their minds right now, which is tragic. It causes them to stop. It causes them not to take actions that they should be taking, and really radical decisions come out of that. Anyhow, Houston, of all large metros, is number 5 in number of foreclosure starts. So the 1 in 1,900, again, this is at the end of the foreclosure process. That's, I believe, number 3 of all metros that are at least 1 million people. Beaumont's suffering in that way, and then Houston is, of large metros, one of the early leaders in trending toward more foreclosures. Again, this is 2 stories. One, there are good opportunities. These are people that are not under a mortgage anymore, but it's going to make it very difficult for them to purchase going forward. This also opens up a lot of really good investment opportunities in the next year or two. But here's my takeaway from this. We have a mission to stop this from happening any further. And I believe that that happens with every single conversation that we choose to have. That happens when, instead of just feeling sorry for those that are suffering, going and seeking new solutions and providing them. Let's find the people that are winning. Let's see how they're winning, and let's see how we can adopt those practices to adapt to these current times? How do we serve people? How do we dismantle fear? How do we get people back in action? How do we both protect people from a pandemic and not shut down the economy at the same time? Because I don't care what anybody says, political left or right, politics don't matter. They have no place in this conversation. And what I will tell you is that if you take away somebody's job because you're trying to save their life, where does that leave them? When they're still alive and they have no home and they have no food. Guys, if we can't serve them in certain ways now, then we're going to be serving them in much, much, much larger ways at a much higher cost later on. So what I'm not saying is let's be reckless. What I am saying is there is a need for new solutions. Keep people safe and keep people earning a livelihood so they can provide for their families. So anyhow, guys, I'd like to keep this on a high note. So I'm going to reference Chuck Norris again. He's behind me. That's about it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll do this again next month. You guys can tune in. Thank you as always for being here. We'll see you next time.